So in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to do the Drunken granny stitch, and we do that by working basically a single row pattern that we will then flip over and we repeat on the other side. And because it repeats just one row pattern, each side looks equally as good as the other side. That makes it really useful if you're wanting to make lap blankets, because it doesn't matter which way around you put them down on your lap. And also if you wanted to make a scarf out of this, it wouldn't matter if things were folded over and you had one half showing on the other half if you folded your scarf. It's quite a lacy pattern. You need to make sure you're quite loose with your stitches, but it's a really nice one. This is made with a double knit yarn. You could make it with an Aran. You just need to make sure you go up hook sizes to make sure you're using a slightly bigger hook than you would ordinarily use. But it's a really simple pattern, so let's get on with it. Hello, my name's Karen Stangram and welcome to Conquer Crochet, the channel for tips, tricks and techniques for conquering your crochet. Everything I talk about in today's video will be linked in the descriptions below. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss a single stitch. So if you're keen to get going with this video, give me a thumbs up and let's do this. So for this tutorial I'm going to be using double knit yarn. I've got a grey and a nice sort of lilac-y purple colour here. Ordinarily I would use a 4mm hook with my double knit yarn. I'm going to use a 5mm hook because we really want to make sure this is a nice sort of lacy kind of stitch and there's lots of gaps. So if you're a particularly tight crochet, you might want to even go up to a 5.5 just to make sure, or even do a 5.5 on your foundation chain and then move back to a 5 for the rest of the pattern. So just to sort of have a play around with it, it may be worth sort of having a go with a little swatch before you embark on a big blanket. So I'm using my 5mm crochet hook. I have my needle for sewing in my ends and my scissors for chopping off my ends. So we're going to start off with a slip knot. You can do this in whichever way you prefer. I do have a video in my beginners playlist on how to do different slip knots. If you'd like to go and have a look at that, I'll put a link in the descriptions below. So we've got our slip knot on our hook and we're going to make our foundation chain. Now our foundation chain needs to be made in multiples of 5. So that can be 10, you might want to make 25, you might want to make 125 depending on the size of your project. So to do that we need to chain 5, so we go yarn over, pull through the slip knot, 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So I've got 10 there. So pause the video now whilst you make your multiples of 5 for the foundation chain for as long as you'd like your piece of work to be. So I've made my multiples of 5 for the sample piece that I want to do. I'm now going to chain 4 more chain stitches for our turning chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We're then going to do our treble. So our treble is going to go into the 6th chain from the hook. Don't count the one on the hook. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and we're going into this one here, the 6th one. So to do that we're going to yarn over, insert into the chain, yarn over, pull that loop back through. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook. You should have 2 loops left. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook. And don't do it too tight, try and be nice and relaxed, keep your hands nice and free flowing, don't pull on the yarn too much. This is quite a lacy pattern that we're wanting to make. So we need to do 3 more trebles, so yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through. We're doing that into the same loop. Yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. Into the same loop again, yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. So we now have 3 trebles. We're going to have 4 in this little bit. So we do 1 more treble, Then we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to do one more treble in that chain space, or in that chain. So yarn over into the same space and make our treble. And there we have our first little block that we're going to work with. So we're then going to skip 4 stitches and we're going to work into the 5th one. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to work into this one and we're going to do the same again. We're going to do 4 trebles. So yarn over into that chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2, into the same chain with the second treble, same chain with the third treble, and the same chain for the 4th treble. We're then going to chain 3 as we did before. 1, 2, 3, and we're going to do one more treble into that chain. Now this becomes a lot quicker as you move through the work, but it's a little bit slower whilst you're working into the chain, but you will get the hang of it and you will start to fly with this. 1, 2, 3, 4, crochet into the 5th with a treble. So that's 1 and 2, 3 and 4, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then one more treble into that same space. Skip 4 and crochet into the 5th chain. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going into the 5th one here with the same pattern of 4 trebles. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Chain 3, and then our treble, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do the same pattern in the 5th one. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then one treble into the same stitch, and we continue that pattern all the way down the row. So if you've done more chain stitches than I've done, then you need to pause the video now and continue, and I will meet you at the end of the row. So at the end of our piece then we're going to have 3 chains left, and we're going to do a treble into that last chain, which will give us so at the end of the row we have 1, 2, 3 chains left. We're going into that last chain with a treble, and that will just give us a nice edge to our work, and that is the end of row 1. The good thing is from here on it's all going to be exactly the same. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to turn our work. Now the only tricky thing you have to do here is make sure you don't go into the spaces on the bottom, you go into the spaces made by the 3 chains that we made. So into those 3 chain spaces we're going to do the same pattern we've been doing. So we're going to do 4 trebles, we're going to chain 3, and we're going to do 1 more treble in that same 3 chain space, remembering to yarn over as you go. Then we don't do any chaining to travel in between, because obviously with the granny square we don't go into the top of stitches, we always go into spaces. So we're going into the next space here. Remember, we don't want to be going into that space, we want to be going into the top space. And again we're going to go in with our 4 trebles. That's 1, 2, 3 and 4. We chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we do 1 more treble into that space, and we travel to the next space, and we do that all the way down this row. So join me when you get to this chain here and I'll show you how we finish off this row. So pause the video now. So I'm coming up to my last chain space here, so I'm going to do my 4 trebles. That's 1, 2, 3 and 4, chain 3, 1 treble, and then we have this chain space at the end here. We're not going to do our pattern in there, but what we're going to do is to do a treble in the top of this 3 chain here. So if we look at our stitches, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then our 3 chain starts in that 5th V there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to go yarn over into the top of that 3 chain, and you just need to push it through, yarn over, pull through, and then finish your treble off as you would normally. And there we have row 2 of our pattern. Row 3 we're going to do in exactly the same way. So we're going to chain 3, making sure we go into this space here and not this one. We're going to repeat our pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, chain 3, 1 more treble in the same space. So continue that pattern all the way down this row, and we're going to change colour for the next row, so if you join me back then I'll show you how we're going to change colour. So I'm coming to my last stitch now, so yarn over and we're going into the top of that 3 chain, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're going into here, and we're going to make our treble, and that's where I'm going to leave that colour, and I'm going to pick up my new colour. And I'm just going to pull that through the top there, and I'm actually going to tie these off in a little while. So I'm going to do my chain 3, 1, 2, 3, turn my work, then we're going to do our 4 treble pattern. So 1 and 2, oops, 3 and 4, chain 3, and then 1 more treble. I'm just going to go back now and tie those ends together in a little knot. And just snip off the grey because I will want that later on. And then we just carry on in exactly the same way as we've been doing. What's really lovely about this pattern is it's just one row and really one repeated pattern that you just need to think about throughout the whole piece. So this is quite a nice one to do if you're traveling somewhere and you're going to be just sort of picking it up and putting it down, or if you're watching something on telly. I've had to stop watching anything that might have subtitles in it because I can't actually read the subtitles in crochet. You may have seen that meme where it says, you know, you're addicted to crochet when you have watched an entire series of a television program and you have no idea what the characters look like. I feel like that with most things at the moment on television. So we just work our way along our row with our 4 trebles, our chain 3, and our 1 more treble, and then we just work into the next stitches. When you get to the end of your row, then you need to count 5 along and then work into the 5th one, which is the top of that 3 chain, and then at the beginning of the next row you chain 3 and you work into the next chain space, making sure you're working into the chain space for the row you're working on and not the row below. So I'm just going to finish off a few more rows and then I can show you how it's turned out. So I've just made a few more rows. So I've got a grey set of 3 rows, a purple set of 3, and then another set of 3 grey. I could carry on with the purple, or it might be quite nice to go onto a yellow or maybe onto a green and have some different coloured stripes in between the grey. As with most things, the possibilities are endless and left up to your imagination of how complicated and how intricate you would like your things to look and colour changes to look. But for such a simple pattern, this looks really complicated, and it really isn't. Let me see if I can just zoom in a little bit there. So you can really see there how the stitch works, and because we turn over and do exactly the same the other way, it looks like we're doing something complicated, but we're not, and they're going different directions, and hence why we get the granny, the drunken granny. So we go whoop, 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 as she may be pinballing down the street. So all we need to do now is to sew in the ends, and when you're sewing in your ends, make sure that you are going through some of these nice bigger areas. So what I would do, for example, on this one, I would just sort of I would stitch through some of these and then maybe go through all of those lovely grey chains there and through another purple one at the end, pop in my end and thread it through, and then I would go over that purple one and just thread back through, and that should make it pretty secure. You could, if you wanted to, come through a purple one here and go back through the end again, but I'm quite happy that that's going to be secure. And we just need to do the same for all of the others. If you wanted to, you could block your work. Now I'm quite a tight crocheter, and I know I should have gone and done my foundation chain in the bigger hook sides. I didn't, but I think for me, I know that I'm quite tight, so in future that's what I'm going to do. Maybe just half a size, just to make sure it doesn't pull in too much here. And that's how to do the drunken granny stitch. I really hope you found today's tutorial useful. If there are any information that you need to find out about this video, have a look in the descriptions below, where I post all the links to any freebies and other videos I think you might find useful. Don't forget, if you have enjoyed this video, to give me a thumbs up below. Don't forget also to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you've enjoyed it and you'd like to see more of my tutorial videos. There are 2 other videos on screen to help you on your crochet journey, and I will see you over there. Thank you so much for joining me on this one, and happy hooking!